Hi, it's Allison of DIY Salvation here to make another journal entry. If you're wondering why I've been making so many of these ever since I've started this series, it's because the channel is at a point where I can say without doubt or reservation that the content of Dennis Stevens's original work, The Resolution of the Mind, a Games Manual, has been thoroughly covered on this channel. Yes, there is the matter of the advanced lectures made in the 90s, and that is a project I am going to keep working on a bit at a time over this year, but in more of a put it on the back burner sort of way, because the task is so enormous that trying to keep up with it at the same rate I did for a year and a half with the basic TROM videos is just going to burn me out. So where does that leave me? In a position where I can finally connect with my viewers on a more personal level, sharing with you my own experiences and opinions for your consideration. And I can answer for you a question that may be lingering in the back of your mind, and that is, why in the world is she doing this? As my motives may not be so terribly obvious to an outsider. I'll start with a few that are most certainly not reasons why I am doing this. First off, I am not here to try and put an end to the Church of Scientology. I am not here to make money. I'm not trying to become famous. I am not trying to start a new religion or cult. I am not here to tell you how to live your life or direct your thoughts, actions, or beliefs. The only thing I will ever do that even remotely resembles that is I will tell you how to study and practice TROM. I mean, you did come to this YouTube channel to learn how to do TROM, so it only makes sense that I tell you how to do it. If you write me about what you are doing and I see you aren't doing it correctly, I am going to correct you. If your lifestyle or other spiritual practices hinder your ability to do TROM, I am going to advise you to change them if you want to get benefits from TROM. I am ruthless and unapologetic on those points, and only that way because you asked for it. I mean, if you want to go off and practice some variation of TROM that you invented yourself, I can't stop you. If you want to do something as stupid as having a martini before each session, I can't do anything other than tell you that it's a bad idea. I know for a fact that there is a guy out there that runs level 1 TROM exercises while he is driving. He said so publicly on a forum. If I think you are going to do something that's going to mess up your mind or endanger your health or safety because you aren't using TROM correctly, it's my responsibility to tell you. But that's all I am going to do. I wash my hands of the matter after that. I am not trying to present TROM as some dangerous subject that you have to be ultra careful about. Realize that the person who starts to invent their own processes does so at their own risk. And the person who drinks before his session and the one that performs his sessions while he is driving are both idiots that, if they never found out about TROM, would still do other stupid things that are going to wind themselves up getting hurt or killed anyway. So now that I have covered what I am not here to do, here is what I am. I am here to point out the problems of Scientology. If you have been listening to my previous journal entries, you can be certain on that point. But I am also here to point out the problems of TROM. I point out the problems concerning each of these because I care about both subjects. But I also have a third purpose, which is far more important than the other two, which is to solve the problems of TROM. You could ask me, well, why aren't you also trying to solve the problems of Scientology? And the answer to that is, I can't. The Church of Scientology owns that subject, or you could even say David Miscavige owns it, and as the owner of it, objectively speaking, he has the right to mess it up as badly as he wants to, and there's really nothing I can do about it. The church ultimately has to solve their own problems. Former members turned critics aren't going to solve them. The government, the press, the high priests, so to speak, none of them are going to be able to solve the church's problems. All me and thee can really do is point out what those problems are, unless of course you are a Scientology executive watching this video. If you are such a person, I'm going to tell you straight out, you better clean house before it falls down. And on some level, you already know this. Scientology has its problems. TROM has its problems. I can only solve the problems of TROM, and despite how much bitching I've done about the Church of Scientology lately, still, at least 95% of my efforts on this channel and in my life are dedicated to solving the problems of TROM, and practicing it myself, of course, as opposed to just complaining about how badly the Church of Scientology is screwing up their own subject by ruining their own reputation and altering the subject itself. I'll first review the problems of Scientology just so we can get it out of the way. Scientology is the most expensive religion I know of. If there's a more expensive one, I'd be awful curious to know what that is. Scientology is a route to freedom that builds a dependency on the church to achieve that freedom. The church is failing in their objectives because they aren't being honest about them. While they state they want to free all mankind, it seems more important to them that we behave ourselves according to their many ethics codes and policies. In other words, it's spiritual freedom at the expense of your personal freedom. If that doesn't make sense to you, I actually reconcile that apparent contradiction in my video entitled Scientology and Prison Earth, which is also an entry in my audio journal. I honestly think the church would be better off telling the world that it's trying to get us all to behave ourselves, and they have a ton of rules and policies that will help us to achieve that. I mean, when you really think of it, isn't that what a great deal of the major world religions are trying to do anyway? Get us all to behave ourselves, for whatever reason, whether it's going to heaven or achieving harmony with the universe, or some other such pleasurable thing? I think the church would actually get a ton of members on that basis alone, if they were ever bold enough to reveal that as their actual intention. But no, they have to go telling us that they are here to free all mankind, then proceed to free you on one hand while controlling you with the other, leaving you and anyone watching totally confused as to what they are doing. Enough about the church. Let's talk about the issues with TROM. One of, but not the biggest problems with TROM is Scientology. Dennis Stevens was a Scientologist. He studied Scientology and then researched and developed TROM much the same way, I suppose, that whoever invented algebra and geometry had to learn mathematics first. This poses two problems for the subject of TROM. The first is, for some people, as soon as you mention that something is even remotely connected to Scientology, they will avoid it like the plague. They won't even look at it. They will ask you not to ever mention it again. You won't even get the chance to tell them that TROM was meant to solve fundamental problems with the subject of Scientology and of being a church member. I'm not making this up to be dramatic. This happens to me more times than I can count, on the internet and in person as well. The second problem TROM's relation to Scientology carries is that Dennis, having written his research paper for L. Ron Hubbard, wrote it using Scientology terms building on Scientology concepts. So even those who are sensible enough to get over their prejudices are still going to have a tough time studying TROM because they are going to have to learn some new vocabulary in order to do this. This next issue I am going to cover is a hot one. It's the elephant in the room that everyone associated with TROM is going to have to confront in one way or another and be honest about if we are ever going to solve it. And I say we, not me, because as ambitious as I am, I cannot possibly do it alone. I'm not going to pull any punches on this one. Not anymore. In the long term, what I have to say will benefit the subject of TROM immensely, even though I am certain I am going to lose a few viewers, and maybe even some friends over it. Alright. Enough of my rambling prelude. Here it is, the raw truth of the matter. TROM's presentation to the public is awful. Nothing about TROM has damaged the subject's proliferation worse than the way it's presented. I've said something like this before, and I am going to say it again, but this time, I am going to get specific. I've already mentioned how Dennis Stevens' original book is terribly confusing. I don't blame Dennis for this. This is because a book is not just a product of an author. It's the product of an author, an editor, and a publisher. Someone should have edited it, and arranged the chapters in a logical order of simplest concepts first, progressing to the more advanced. They should have made sure that the book had a full glossary and annotations. Even if just this minimal amount of work was done, the book would have been 10 times easier to read and understand. Now you'd think that in the last 45 years someone would come along and at least do that. And some TROMers have at least updated the glossary, and answered questions on forums, and that sort of thing, and I have a great deal of respect for such people. But there's one updated edition of TROM that actually makes the work even more confusing than the original, and that's the one sold on Amazon. It adds in the beginning several introductory chapters that even some Scientologists aren't going to get, and uses terminology that isn't even defined in the poorly compiled glossary. In other words, if you really want to prevent someone from understanding TROM, just tell them to buy it off of Amazon. Think I am making this up? Think I am exaggerating? I told my sister once about TROM, and she got all excited about it. I warned her it was difficult reading, but I sent her a study guide and a glossary and the original edition of the TROM manual. What did she do? She went on Amazon and started reading Pete McLaughlin's book instead, and after a few pages, lost interest in TROM for good. Now, just in case you think I am being terribly unfair to Pete on this matter, I must inform you, this is not the whole story. Not by a long shot. I wrote him about all the issues that his book had, and even offered to proofread it and stick a better glossary in the back of it for free. He declined my offer, saying I could put out my own book if I wanted to. He told me that at one time in his life he worked very hard to compile the TROM materials, and he was done with it. While that does make some sense to me, on some level, what doesn't make sense is that he refused my help. He's become so complacent about TROM and his poorly edited books and repellent website, that he won't even correct the simplest spelling errors on tromhelp.org. And yes, I have already pointed them out to him privately through messaging, and publicly on a forum. He won't do anything to improve the face of TROM, yet he keeps his books up for sale. He puts himself out there as the authority on the subject, and his site as the download source for the materials on TROM. As far as I am concerned, at best, his work is a mixed blessing for the subject of TROM. Now I try to keep these journal entries down to 1,500 words or below, mostly to accommodate the average attention span of the average YouTube viewer, and also to accommodate for the endurance of my typing fingers, or lack thereof, which worsens as I get older, and I am already up to about 2,300 words already. So I am going to end off here, but only for now. I am going to in my next entry go into detail of all of what needs fixed on the tromhelp.org website, in the books, the transcripts, and other ways that site and those books repel people away from TROM. In closing, I just would like to say, Peter, if you are watching, I offered you my help. That offer has been standing for over 5 years now. I built this YouTube channel so people could enjoy a more polished presentation of TROM. I revised the manual so people could understand it better. Everything I've created for this channel, you have free license to use to improve your site. I've been more than generous in my offer to help. But you won't even correct the simplest typos on your website, which would only take about 10 minutes to handle. You could completely fix the books and the transcripts with only a few days' work between what I've written and the proofread transcripts that come in the work titled TROM the Full Package, which I am sure you are aware of. You can still fix these problems. And when you do, I will remove this video and any other videos on my channel exposing this sloppy work of yours. Like I promised, in my next installment of my journal, I will go over all of the issues of tromhelp.org and Peter's books. In the meantime, go ahead and visit that site and feel free to draw your own conclusions about it. Comment about it below if you like. With clarity of conscience and a heavy heart, this is Allison Tandri of DIY Salvation signing off for now.